Before we get into today's interview, I want to remind you all to be sure to support our partners in safety. They help make this podcast possible. First and foremost, we have Mighty Line Floor Tape. They were partners in safety from way back, the original partners in safety. They've supported this podcast for a very long time. Look, if you're struggling in your facilities with markings, layout, 5S, Mighty Line has you covered. They have all those floor marking materials from signs to tape. They've got tape designed to withstand forklift traffic, textured tape for grip, for slips, trips, falls, all of that good stuff. You can even have custom signs made with your high resolution logos and images. So go to mightylinetape.com/podcast. Let them know that we sent you, and you can get a free sample of their incredible floor tape. That's mightylinetape.com/podcast. Also, we want to thank Aero Safety. Drew Hinton over at Aero Safety has been a huge fan of the podcast for many years and is now a friend and not just a colleague. We have gotten together many times on the podcast and talked about topics that are important to all safety professionals. And we love the support that Aero Safety has shown the podcast. If you have safety training needs, you have safety program development needs, if you want audits, inspections of your facilities, you want something that's customized for your business, not just some off-the-shelf generic audit, inspection, or training program, then Aero Safety has you covered. Go to aerosafetyus.com and get a custom quote today.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Blaine Hoffmann. I'm the producer and host of the Safety Pro podcast, and I am honored to be back again at the TapRoot Global Summit, and we'll be leading a conversation around preventing serious incidents and fatalities. And I have some guests up here that we're going to be having a discussion with all of you that are in attendance, so feel free to engage with them and ask questions as they come up. We'd love to have a good discussion about this. So Adam, Britton, why don't we start with you? Introduce yourself to everybody, and then we'll move on over here to this side.
Okay. Thanks, Blaine. So welcome, everybody. Adam Britton. I'm a Director of Workplace Safety with International Flavors and Fragrances. I've been in safety coming up on 22 years now. I started out years ago at Murray State University and was able to find my path with a large corporation doing a lot of different roles in different business units, and anything from wet corn milling, underground salt mining, some flour milling in there, and then recently came to the flavors and fragrances business, and I really enjoy what I do. This type of summit, bringing people together, subject matter experts from many different fields, not just safety, reliability, a lot of different competencies represented, just some great knowledge sharing, and happy to be able to share today.
Yeah, it's a great summit. And speaking of underground mining, it's something you did in your background. Justin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Blaine. Welcome, everyone. Justin Clark. I work for a Canadian gold, copper mining-focused company. I'm a health and safety manager at the site level. And I started my journey with the company probably back in about, I think it was 2012, and integrated into health and safety in 2017. One thing that seems to happen is once you start hanging out with a bunch of mining group people, you just seem to get tendencies just to stick in that group. And so TapRoot has just been an excellent avenue to just get out of that realm and start to interact with other people and learn different practices and how we can prevent incidents and accidents and making sure that everyone's going home safe. So this has been a great turnout as well.
Absolutely. Nice. So speaking of preventing serious incidents and fatalities, and we call it SIFs here, I know that's the name of this session, and it's gone by different names. How were you first introduced to this concept of developing a program specific to these types of incidents? Why is it important for us to focus on SIFs exclusively? We'll start with you.
Sure. So I was fortunate to start my career with a large company, Cargill, and they were just starting a journey with going in with multiple companies, large corporations, to understand why were we seeing such an improvement in recordable injuries, but still seeing serious injuries, people's lives being changed and, of course, potentially losing their lives at work. And there was some research done, somewhat in a forum like this, where a lot of these folks started to see the problem. We've made progress in safety as it goes for, say, our recordable injuries is what we report in the U.S. to OSHA. However, we were seeing spots where serious incidents were being repeated, whether it was high energy hazards, things that we had in common across different businesses, different types of industries. We still see some of those injuries occur. And so it was really kind of some thought leaders. I got to think of one of my first mentors, Michael Damison, that started to bring some of us from the sites in and some of our high-risk businesses where we had, chemical processes, large high-energy equipment, the mining sector, of course. There's certain industries where we see the repeated fatalities year after year. Construction is another one that even comes in with general industry. So it was really trying to wrap our arms around what are those specific things people are doing where they lose their life at work. I mean, we are all people. Our role as safety leaders and safety managers and those that work with our operations is to make sure people go home at the end of the day. And to see someone that may not go home at all, or may have the rest of their life altered to just because of some activity that we have control over in many ways. It started that kind of that evolution, and there are a lot of thought leaders that we think of way back to Conklin, some of the the human performance thought process. We're looking at these incidents after the fact. We have the benefit of hindsight. How can we get into the workers, I guess, their consciousness or what they were doing at the time to be able to put themselves in that kind of a risky situation? It's very easy for us to look after the fact and say, what was that person thinking? How could they have made a mistake that severe, that grave? But at that moment, they were truly doing probably the best that they thought that they could with the resources they had. And we have the chain of events that lead to that tragedy, that unfortunate event.
Yeah, when it comes to the HOP principles, if you want to invoke those principles, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I'd say it's one of the most important to remember in the context of incident investigations is that context drives behavior. And we're, in large part, what we're trying to do is understand that context, right? We know what happened, right? We have that hindsight bias that will come into play and make those leaps of assumptions from knowing what happened because we see the results of it and making those assumptions. So understanding that context is important. And so, Justin, when we were talking about the low-hanging fruit is what I call it, some of the minor injuries and incidents, and our rates start to go down, right? Because those are easy to solve for. Do you see a correlation with leaving some of those harder to solve types of incidents that result in catastrophic loss of life or impacting somebody's life? Do you see what Adam was talking about? Like, why do we still have those out there?
Yeah, I think we're starting to improve. We're taking a greater responsibility, or we're approaching it in a different manner to look at these lower hanging fruit, the hazards that are the easy ones that most people can see.
Right.
And we've taken an approach that there is an expectation, there's a KPI to start to identify what a hazard is, what is this low hanging fruit. And I think what it's doing now is it's upskilling them, because in the beginning they weren't very good at it. And now, so what we're finding is now that we've got the workers that are in the mine or in the plant recognizing the smaller hanging stuff, some of us others can look at the high potential, potentially catastrophic, the critical risk sort of things, and look at what the types of controls that we can put in place, how do we verify these controls, and start to have this interaction with our teams out in the field to make sure that we're verifying, and then they also recognize the type of hazard that's around them. So I do think there's a correlation as the safety behavior is getting there, but to Adam's point, there are still some incidents that do happen. Mining for us it's inherently hazardous, so you really got to be on your game.
That's right.
That's interesting. And so I was going to ask, why is it important to focus on these? And it sounds like, as a matter of practice, understanding what's causing minor injuries and incidents that are probably more frequent. I hate to use the word practice, but like getting proficient, unfortunately, at this process will translate into, naturally, could translate into reducing or eliminating or preventing some of those serious incidents and fatalities. So we talk about a SIF program, right? A serious incident or fatality program, and it goes by different names, and we'll talk about what we all might call them, slightly different, but focusing on the same area: serious incidents and fatalities. What is a SIF program? Is it written? Is it in a binder somewhere? What does that mean when we say a SIF program? We'll start with that.
Sure. I think it starts with kind of having some terminology. What is a SIF? Serious injury. We know fatality doesn't have to be defined, but you'd be surprised sometimes with a room full of safety professionals or VPs trying to look at an incident to say, okay, this person was taken away in an ambulance and they're going to have maybe a fingertip amputated. Is that life-altering? Well, we have to think of the energy. If there's something capable to take off a fingertip, it probably could have taken the finger or the hand. And kind of don't want to get into the gory details, but some of the behaviors that put people in those situations, whether it's not being aware of line of fire, how we put ourselves in the path of hazardous energy, mobile equipment. Some of those are just simple mistakes. Sometimes it may result in no harm at all. The next day, the same event may happen, and we have that tragedy on our hands. The program itself really has to start with the awareness of there's certain types of energy, certain tasks around us that can lead to that loss of life, or they could lead to a life-altering injury. And I think it starts with our leadership to understand. We're not talking about a laceration with a pocket knife as I'm opening a wrapper of a piece of equipment. The slip and fall on the same level. It's not really likely or relevant to think that could be a fatality every time somebody slips and falls. But if somebody's working 12 feet overhead in a construction environment hanging steel, that slip and fall can lead to fatal consequences. So some of those simple behaviors, can translate into those fatalities in the right context, as you mentioned. So it's bringing that awareness together to make sure we have first the focus of our safety professionals hand in hand with our operations leaders. Right. So again, historically, we're focused on the things that keep off our OSHA log. We're really putting a lot of energy and effort and resources into some of those minor injuries. That kind of takes our eye off the ball for some of the higher risk things and the high hazards that we deal with. So the program, again, it starts with awareness, but then as we start to get deeper into how we broadcast that awareness, how we make it known to people in different countries, across different facilities, different types of operations, you really need to think about how does this speak to your team? How does this really be a part of your culture? To make sure that that's a constant priority and a constant focus. And I hate to even use the word priority, but certainly we have to figure out what's in front of us. And with a SIF program that's kind of comprehensive, the way that we conduct risk assessments, the way that we attack corrective actions following some of those near-miss events, if we can bring those to the highest level of awareness and attention and get those resources that every plant needs, that every work group needs, to address those hazards that could kill you, that really takes kind of a complete team effort across the organization. So when it comes to training, as I mentioned, doing risk assessments and then bringing that forward for really either the corporate suite or the guy in the corner office of the plant that's making decisions where we're going to spend our resources. This has to be kind of brought to the forefront.
Interesting. You'll almost invoke the energy wheel that Alex likes to mention from time to time, which I'm a fan of as well. The reason why is, to your point, it forces us to look at this stuff differently, risk in a different way in terms of energy potential. Then it's another angle that we could say, okay, how do we reduce the energy or stop that energy or catch that energy? So it's another way of looking at it. So Justin, how about you? What is in a SIF program? And I know you have another term that you can throw out here for us.
For sure. We started this program for us about I think it was around 2017. And as I mentioned earlier, us as a mining group, it seems to be that we get 10 or 15 of us together and we have a roundtable. And the goal of this roundtable was fatal reduction, get it to a zero. But within this, we follow the International Council of Mining and Minerals, and they actually have elements or boxes that you should be checking when it comes to fatal risk. First of all, you need to be honest with yourself. Have you actually all identified your potential fatal risk within your site? So that was where we started. In 2017, we said, oh, yeah, we need to be honest. We should be checking. And then once we started to identify what our fatal risks were on site, we started to assign some ownership. Who's gonna manage the type of risk that goes along with that? Then it kind of stopped there. It's like, okay, we've identified it, we have an owner, now what? Right. So now what we're working on is, it's not a SIF program, it's called critical risk management or fatality risk management. We're gonna stick with critical risk management. It seems to be a term that seems to work for folks on our side. But we started this program earlier this year, starting in January, and now it's focused on looking at those specific risks, fatal risk attached to mining, and verifying it. Nice. Getting out in the field, you said you had an owner that controls or is responsible for the control, but who's checking it before the work gets done? Right. And so we're just starting this little program, and it's, we're at baby steps at the moment, and it's really picking up some steam right as we're talking now, and so far having some success.
So program, it sounds like it isn't some manual that just spells out you do this, you do that. It's a program in the literal sense of the term, and that there is a focus on this area. And you can call it different things, and then you identify who's responsible for what, set some expectations. You have a goal, but then obviously I would love to open it up here in a little bit to the group, but it's a matter of what's the best way for us to manage these risks we've identified, in this risk profile. How do we shrink that profile? How do we lower that risk score, if you will? Yeah. And then using some of the tools and techniques that I hope we're all familiar with in this room. And if not, I think TapRoot might be able to help with that. Just had to get that plug in there for you, Alex. But I think what we want to do now is talk about some of the specifics that go into that. And you both shared some of your stories on how you got to where you are. Let's talk about implementing a SIF program. Like talking about different countries, we have language differences and barriers. You mentioned using the word critical risk management. If I say CRM, what's the first thing some of you might think about out here in the audience? CRM. That's CCR. That's Creedence Clear. Yeah. Certified Risk Manager, so it's a person. Title. CRM, what's another? Customer. Yeah, it's completely different, right? What about contractor risk management? CRM programs, contract. So language is important. Words matter, right? Language is important. What worked and didn't work for along your journey, or that you're finding out? We'll start with Adam.
Sure. Immediately go to things that maybe hopefully worked. We've been actively going through an awareness campaign we're calling life-saving principles. And three basic principles. We evaluate, or first we know when we're going into a task that may have fatal potential or that has that high risk.
Because you've identified it.
We've identified it. We make it known. We have 12 high-risk activities that are common across the plane. I could rattle some of those off, but the principle is that we identify this is not a normal task. This is not me pulling bags off a production line necessarily. So I'm going into this with an awareness there's fatal risk. The next piece is we have to identify the critical safeguards in place. What are those critical safeguards? It could be, let's take confined space entry, for example. If we're going into an area that could have a bad atmosphere, we make sure that we're testing that. We make sure that we have someone else that's going to watch for us, that's an attendant. We make sure that we've isolated the energy on that confined space. We have a systematic process through the permitting system that we've had for decades, just to make sure those critical controls are in place. Our third principle was that at any point there's an indication one of those controls is inadequate, one of those controls has been overlooked, or simply just not complied with, it's an all stop. And we really tie in this stop work authority. We like to call it pause work authority, because we are going to restart at some point, but anyone in the plant, whether it's an hourly worker, a contractor, even a visitor that sees a fatal risk, one of these high-risk activities with one of those safeguards missing, they can stop, and they have that right and that responsibility in our facilities in IFF. So it's really that, kind of that program of these are the principles, and then with each high-risk activity, we would try to break that down in the most simplest terms. What are the fatal risks here? If I'm talking about mobile equipment, I could talk about a rollover. I could talk about a pedestrian being struck by that mobile equipment. The equipment being inadequate or fail if I'm in an awkward situation. So some of those risks, then we tie in with, well, okay, what are my very simple critical safeguards? And so we tried to work through some of those. We got a team approach within our team at IFF and really spent some time whittling down, from maybe a 30, 40 page policy or, a checklist to what are the few things that we have in place that will prevent the worst outcomes. And then you can start to build your audit programs around those safeguards. You can start to build your observation system, your investigations. Those are the first things you're going to check after you have even a near miss involving one of the high-risk activities. Were those critical safeguards in place? Were they verified? Back to Justin's point. And sometimes we need a second set of eyes. Sometimes, we're talking about a permit. It's a piece of paper. It's an administrative control. But that partnered with another trained individual, a management authorization through our permit to work program, laced in with those engineering controls and safeguards, then we're starting to really kind of fill in the holes, as we call it, in the Swiss cheese, or in those safeguards.
Oh, the old layered defense model.
Defense in depth.
And so, just listening to you talk about this, it's not just that this is a standalone program. What it's really doing is it's connecting all of your other efforts and deploying them when it's appropriate. You mentioned confined space entry. That we could take that as a separate program,
absolutely,
in a silo.
Right.
But it's really understanding that this is a systems approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's not linear thinking, really. It's systems thinking. So, Justin, how about you? What were some lessons learned or some things? And I want to go back to the stop work because I'm interested to see if you're going to mention this. Yeah. What lessons learned, best practices, things that worked or didn't work?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we recognized that we needed to start to verify these ownership groups or who's running the programs or the training or the implementation of these critical risk controls. And so luckily for us, we have our leadership team at the corporate level they are on board. They support it 100%. So it started at the top. And then what we did is we ended up working with a third party that is focused on critical risk management. And it's an app-based type. It's a desktop and app-based. And what we ended up doing was identifying the 20 high-risk activities within mining. We have those risks on the app. And at different levels of the organization, whether you're a manager or superintendent, you're looking at the design, the implementation, the training, and then the worker is actually looking at what's happening in the field. Is this actually controlled and is it verified? And so to make this successful, what we ended up doing was we brought in some consultants, high energy consultants focused on hot principles and those sorts of things, and we called them a boot camp. And so we did all of leadership on our site. So there was 45 of us that went through the program, and the reason being is we were worried about bringing in another program that could potentially not be sustainable. So we wanted to have good impact, why we're doing it, our commitment to it, and making sure that people are well trained with it. And so there's a big focus on the app portion of it, which has the stop work authority in there. So a worker at any point can verify that there is a control in place or not, and if it's not, has the authorization to stop work before he continues. So that's been a great piece. The second piece, which was a side benefit, was the visible felt leadership that we have with our management and leadership actually in the field with people, because we can often get quite busy at our desk, and I'll get into the field at a little bit later date, but we set some KPIs for our leadership that this is an expectation. You need to be in the field and doing it. What ended up happening, a real nice benefit of it is the leadership started to decide or figure out that this is actually my job. This is what I actually should be doing.
Shocker, right?
Yeah, I should be in the field checking and talking with my team. So we've had some great success so
Good.
far.
So you kind of answered the question I was going to ask, which is great, and I think you kind of got to it as well. You touched on it with leadership support, right? How do you get buy-in for not just this program? I was going to kind of get into this question using the stop work as an entry point, and then get into, okay, how do you get overall buy-in? But let's talk about buy-in for a second, because it's important. It's one thing, right, to have leadership support something. We've all been there where leadership says, yes, this is important, and then crickets. That's the last you hear about. Like, that's all they had to do was rubber stamp it. What does leadership support mean in terms of buy-in?
Oh, that's a great question, because there's layers,
Yeah.
right? And it's as my career's evolved from working at a site to different operations and facilities. You're part of that leadership team with the plant manager, the frontline supervisors, and we can get a campaign going within our team. Mm-hmm. As you get to more of a corporate level, there's the senior leadership, right? That's who's really driving the decisions and driving the resources to the sites. So we started there. We really brought in the plant managers, the senior person on site, as well as the safety professionals. Mm-hmm. One area, looking back, you asked, what maybe didn't work, where I think we've still got some work to do, is at that first line supervisor level. Right. So
we always miss that, the middle squeeze, we call it, right?
And because sometimes it's the hardest group to reach. These
Yeah.
are busy people. These are people that usually have packed agendas from the time they get there in the morning till they leave at the end of the day, leading their teams in the field.
Yep.
So to come to a global webinar and listen for an hour about this new program that corporate's rolling out, it's not really at their top of their list.
Who's running the business? Right?
Yes, exactly. They're making the money for the company, and they're keeping the plants running. Yeah. So we have to get creative in the ways that we reach that audience. Nice. We kind of tried with a grassroots approach. Certainly engaging as I mentioned, our safety professionals, their teams, as well as some of those safety champions that are around us within the operation. But we've got some feedback, from a supervisor standpoint. What do I need to do? What are the tools that you're going to give me to be a better auditor or a better, just brother sister's keeper out in the plant? So we've gone forward with a few tools. Leader's guide. That's just the 12 life-saving or high-risk activities around our life-saving principles campaign. To get those in the hands of our sites, of course, we had to go through translations and some different things, but it's starting to really, I think, to see that this is a persistent thing. It's not a flavor of the month. Was a one-year effort, just to get awareness up. Mm-hmm. There's going to be layers of this from a management system and a programmatic standpoint to really make sure that it's going to be around for a while.
So Adam was talking about a couple of things there, and then you mentioned buy-in, or leadership support. So changing the expectations, do we see that top management or leadership does this enough, whereas they say, yes, this makes sense, this is the right thing to do, we should do this, but then on the back end, what we're expecting from performance and standard work doesn't change? And did you go through something like this on your end? So talk a little bit about what had to change there in order to increase buy-in and adoption for this program.
Yeah, I think for us, I think I'm in a pretty fortunate state, because most of our leadership at the executive level have at one point been an underground miner. So they actually recognize the hazards. Good. And have experienced serious incidents with colleagues. And so our leadership, basically every conversation starts with safety is number one. This is what we need to do. But you're right, if we say that at the top, our pinch point there is, are we getting our general supervisors or our supervisors to get that buy-in as well and make change? And that's what the expectation is. And so this is why we went to this high impact consultant to come in and help just put a little bit of oomph to the program, and then set the expectation. And at our site leadership level, it was right there. It was like, we were going to stop everything we're doing today, clean your calendars, flip it over, start adding these types of activities into your calendar. And so far, it's been working really good.
Good. And I could see how this could trickle down all the way to standard work. Something is, I'll say simple, sometimes it's not that simple, but something as simple as conducting your weekly inspections or audits of programs, like making sure that we fold in elements of this effort in a meaningful way. And I'm often very critical of some inspections or even audits that are performed that ask vague questions and lend themselves to interpretation. So you get differing answers from a qualitative standpoint across managers. And so you really don't get a good idea of the current state of things out there with expectations from audits and inspections. So looking at standard work, I think, is important. When you say this is important, I would ask, let's see how important it is, and go to the standard work and go, I don't see it anywhere in here as an expectation. You're not giving them the opportunity to act on this. So did you want to add something? Because I know he was talking.
No, he did, and Justin covered it great. One thing I was thinking around, from a senior leadership standpoint, one thing we really started to see, and we've seen for decades, the measure of success and safety is typically the number of recordable injuries on your log. And I know many of you in the audience are from other countries outside the U.S., so that may not mean a lot. But I think across industry, it's that TRIR, total recordable incident rate. And that's just been kind of the measuring stick because the math is easy. There's kind of somewhat complex criteria, what's a recordable, what's not. But once you know that stuff, then, okay, that's what we're going to focus on. That's what we're going to measure for what we need to do. We're currently going through a process to kind of flip the script there a little bit, where that metric, again, kind of somewhat encourages us to bring employees back to work so it's not a lost time injury. We may do some medical management so it doesn't get the recordable, it's just treated as a first aid. And some of that is even, I guess, counterproductive to being supportive to the employee, getting the employee support that they need after an event or an incident or an injury. And so those things, we are starting to look at kind of some new standards that are coming out. Currently there's the ASTM 2920 that really focuses on levels of events, but it starts out with the fatality, and then it really closely aligns with our definition of life-altering or life-threatening injury. And that makes your, what we're calling a critical injury rate. Anything below that still meets the recordable criteria kind of goes to a different level. Now, we still have to treat every injury as important. We don't want to overlook, to the credit of the person, it hurts to have an injury. It's not something we want to do, and we have to learn from those. But from a high level, from an organizational standpoint, what's important is what we're measuring. And if we continue to measure that, TRIR is the ultimate measure of safety. That's where everybody's focus is going to be. So we're kind of trying to go back and re-engineer our incident management program, our policies, and make sure that we're really looking at the right way to treat our employees that are out there in the field dealing with these hazards.
And it goes back to that systems view.
That's right.
Yeah, you mentioned everything from a return to work program. Do we have something there? To case management? Are we connected with those individuals and communicating about the state of a case and how it's progressing, to managing it in situ, on site, if you will? Do we have an occupational health clinic where it's permitted, right? And to be able to manage those so they don't flip. And of course, that's an actuarial focus, but what we learn from all those interactions, what organizational learning, dare I say another hot principle, but organizational learning is key.
That's
and
right.
How are we learning from all those? And if we're doing them all in a silo, right, a stovepipe, if you will, we're not sharing. The organization isn't learning what's really going on. So that's great. That's important. What advice would you give, Justin, to anybody looking to start a SIF-focused or centric program like this, and an effort in their organization? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think it's looking at your safety system, and it lends to what Adam was speaking about, because we're doing a very similar thing, flipping, trying not to talk about TRIFR anymore. What are going to be our leading indicators? So get alignment first. Like, what are we going to do from a leading indicator perspective to the elements that you talk to, or the training and how you can track that and how things are trending downwards? So for me, I would be get alignment, make sure that the goal is there on the leading indicators, how we're going to track it, and then you can start to develop a program. I think one of the things that maybe I'm struggling with a little bit at the moment when we're talking about the program is coming up with that policy document as to what this program is going to look like. And then policy is one, and then the program itself, so levels of the ownership and the roles and responsibilities allocated to it. So might be a good idea to start to get the groundwork done. That's key. And then, of course, you want to make it sustainable. So, making sure you're adding the appropriate resources to make sure that the kickoff is really good, the leadership is really good, and there's great buy-in from there. So I think those are pretty key elements.
Absolutely. How about you?
Yeah, I think, where's your kind of locus of control? If you're at a plant level and we don't have any kind of a SIF awareness program, you spend some time, talk with your team. Where did they have tasks that they don't feel comfortable with? I like the question, when you were a new hire coming into this facility, what scared you? What did you not want to do? And those are kind of the tasks that we need to start to really analyze and really take through some of that rigor. Starting a new program, I would say benchmark. We have a lot of resources out there through, just some of the things like, first the TapRoot Summit, some of the groups that we're interacting with today. We've really dug into a couple of networking groups within our industry. National Safety Council has a special kind of task force that's focusing on SIF prevention. There's some great resources even overseas. I ran across a life-saving principles program in Australia that really did a nice job to identify, kind of lay out some of those risks systematically. It was an electrical power utility, but some of those same concepts apply to us making flavors and colognes and different things that serve the consumer markets. So it's be ready to be flexible, take an idea, shape it to what's really going to fit your organization, fit your facility, and that your leadership can get behind. And then it's some creative marketing. It's some people that are committed to it to really put this forward as the safety program of the future. So we're really focusing on that progress.
Yeah, you hit on something there at the end that's critical that most of us aren't very good at. And I'm going to date myself by referencing this movie. And if you don't know the movie, go watch it. But we take this field of dreams approach, right? If you build it, everybody will just know about it.
Right. And I'm from Iowa, by the way. So
you did build it then, didn't you?
I live in Iowa. Yes.
Okay. So you can't just get a group of you together and write this program and organize this and then expect it just organically through, osmosis or something to just get out there. You have to have that common thread throughout everything from what you were saying, Justin, setting expectations, baking it into your roles and responsibilities. And here's a tip I'm going to leave you that I learned the hard way. Roles and responsibilities can't be vague. No ambiguous language in there. If there's an expectation, it has to be measurable and observable. So lead safety, lead a safety culture. Well, define that. Like, I want to know what are the things you should be doing or I should be observing that indicate you're doing that, and that becomes your standard work. That's the expectation. So we miss that. Like, we just kind of stop at some point and expect everyone to just do as they're told. Or we do worse than that. What I mentioned earlier, we don't change roles and responsibilities or performance expectations day to day or week to week, and then we just add this new thing on but don't really track it, but we're still tracking all these other things. What do you think most people are going to work towards day to day, week to week? The thing that my direct manager is going to evaluate me on. That's right. And so we have to continue that momentum all the way down to just the hourly workers and the new hires, those that actually do the work that we rely on. We have to make sure that they understand it as well and bake it in there. So let's open it up to the group here with questions, comments, or if you have a story to share or something to add that might improve this conversation. I think I saw your hand. Sorry, just state your name real quick.
About the program. So the first thing is the The name of the program in my company is FBI.
S-
FBI.
FBI?
Yeah, FBI.
Oh, okay.
Fatality, Permanent Impairment Program.
Okay.
And when we were in the first, conference and announcing the program, one worker said, why we are calling the program in that way? It needs to be preventive, or the prevention word needs to be next to the acronym. Because it's like calling the program Total Recall Incident Rate or something like that.
Right.
And I think it was, yeah, it's true.
So the name of the program, if I'm understanding the workers' concern, the name of the program or the acronym didn't really speak to the intent of the program.
To the intent.
All right.
Because it's like calling fatality a program. And
Right.
the idea is to prevent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is an important.
Yeah. Good call out.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And the other thing is, as you mentioned, IOGP is an excellent source of information. For us, they have a definitions about what could be an FBI or SIF incident, because they call it SIF incidents.
Mhm.
And we are measuring potentials and actuals.
Yes.
Because the trend, the idea is to check the trend also with potentials, and we found the definitions in IOGP. So there are materials there. I recommend IOGP because it's a standardized way that we can all of us measure what could be a potential
Mhm.
for this
Or
FBI.
FBI.
So I need to double think, but yeah, I think it's use what is available right now.
And so you measure potential. You're reminding me of a tool that a colleague used. It was a FEMA, but they called it a PFEMA because they would apply a what-if scenario to the FEMA, so they kind of had different approaches. But they would say, what if we skipped this step or the operator missed this step? What was the potential? Like they would go through every step and try to figure out if they missed this one, what does it mean? What if they missed this one? And kind of get ahead of it a little bit. They said they learned a lot about why do we need to do, and they actually leaned out some of their process steps as a result of that exercise. Mm-hmm. And there's value of getting others involved. And I know earlier, Alex was talking, I don't know who was in the learning teams session Alex had earlier, but there's value in getting those other perspectives because, we don't know what we don't know and we can't see what we can't see. And so we are limiting ourselves when we shrink that group of people that give us feedback for those. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point on the potential SIF. Those things that may result in no harm or even a minor scrape bump that doesn't require any treatment. There's ways that we could look at that, and everybody's got a different perspective on the context, the experience. And, I could say something as a PSIF where Justin completely disagrees. One tool we found was the Edison Electrical Group, led by Matthew Hollowell and all. They put together a flow chart that talks about, was it an actual high risk or high energy event? And then you move on down and determine, if there was no actual injury, was there a direct control? Direct control specifically designed for the hazard that would be there even if there was a human error. And if that direct control was what prevented the event, in that model, they don't call that a PSIF, they call that a capacity event or something that was almost a success. Our system proved that we have the capacity to prevent that, but that's in that one snapshot in time. Is that consistent direct control across your entire organization and enterprise where it would be reliable to save someone's life? Those are some of the challenges that we're starting to work through, and we have a great team of people, and we try and stay calibrated on what we consider as fatal potential or fatal likely before we classify and really say this is critical. We have to have every site verify this control because if you're not careful, every near miss that comes across, you're sending a safety alert out to all your plants and you're causing a lot of work that may or may not be necessary.
And you'll create that risk fatigue too.
That's right,
Eventually,
exactly.
people will start to rack and stack them by themselves and go, yeah, this one's not us. And
Right.
we're not going to be focused on that. Okay, we had some more. Yes, sir.
So I'm just comment about the SIF potential.
Yeah.
So we start now implementation of the SIF also in our company or RBI in South Oman. And for potential, we draw like a flow chart with the questions yes or no, which will lead the team to find is it safe potential or not. Several questions they need to answer it with yes or no, and it will lead them to the answer if it safe potential or not. Because we also consider incident with high potential as safe in dealing with a incident.
So so what I understand is that you take near misses, for example, and you do the what if this did result in something?
Yeah, not only near misses.
Even the other, okay.
Even the incident with not recordable, but has a potential to be.
So minor injuries
yes.
and, right,
Sometimes
okay.
it's a minor injury.
Okay.
But it has a high potential.
Right.
Also to be a higher injury. So we draw this flow chart with some question with answer yes or no to take you to the final decision. Is it a safe potential or not safe potential?
Good, awesome, okay. Alex?
Go with one. You mentioned early about the fact that a part of this program is verifying controls are active and auditing those. What are some of the strategies that you guys are using to help make this easy for operators to identify those controls are working?
I think that one's to me.
You want Justin? Yeah, I think he was calling you out, I think.
Yeah, it's like, I think what the approach that we're taking to make it easy is we're using it's app based. And so we're getting into the field, and what we're actually looking for is we have a mental state, particularly at our site, is we want everything to be green. Green is good to go. And so what we were seeing there is people were getting out in the field, they were checking it. Ooh, we have a control that's not actually in place. I'll go fix it and I'll mark it green and we'll carry on. But we have to change the mentality. Is like we need to be able to trend and track what was wrong. And so yes, we can fix these in the field, but we still need to identify that red, that wasn't good. And
What got it in that state, or how did that get
exactly
missed? Okay.
And I think our teams now are starting to recognize the value of it's a reporting culture, basically, is what we're talking about, and really driving that culture to be transparent, fix it. There's a no blame culture that we have on site. We use a fair and just type model, so we're really trying to get our teams to elevate their game and recognize these sort of things. But I think relying on the app, focusing on those things that are wrong, and it's making it easy for the teams.
In some industries, it's going to be difficult to do this. Construction is a good example where you could point to multiple reasons why, but help me out if this is the case for mining and some of the specific work that you do. But I've put my human factors hat on, right? Is it easy to do right, hard to do wrong, Alex? Your favorite? We're going to get that going. We're going to get a bumper sticker for that one. So can we either, what's the term we used to use? Poka-yoke. There's one term. Can we engineer out the human element, needing somebody to check on it? Can we have our alerts or alarms kind of built into some of our safeguards or things that we're checking manually? Do you see any learnings from folks in that area, and have you done any of that?
Yeah, and I can't say we've got this figured out by any means. It's an evolution of learning. Years ago, it was an analogy of rumble strips on the highway that didn't exist when I started driving. And it's a simple technology. You start to fall asleep or you're drifting, all of a sudden something's going to tell you you're getting in the ditch. You better get back in your lane. How can we design those into our systems? Technology, engineering with it. I think some of the new technology with AI, with the wearables that will tell you where a person is in relation to the hazard or in a facility.
Proximity.
Some of those warnings. But that's getting to that higher level of tech. Where we are focused today is what are the standard expectations if we have a new system, a new piece of equipment. Are the isolation points within close distance? Do we have to really guess? Do we have the right process where we're removing the opportunities for mistakes one at a time?
Good.
But it's continuing to work on it. We don't have the silver bullet for that yet.
Wow. Yeah, rumble strips. Thanks for reminding me how old I am. Well, I remember they were almost never around when I started learning. Any other comments, questions? Yes, sir, back there.
Thank you. About a month ago,
Sorry, we'll get this.
in Peru, there was a very large fatality in the mining industry. I don't know if you're question is, how do you incorporate these fatalities from third-party companies into your safety program?
So the question is, and we're repeating for the benefit of the microphone, so the question was, how do we include third-party contractors into our program as well?
Not all contractors or completely other companies.
Incidents that other companies.
Incidents that other companies experience, right, into our program. Okay. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about industry events, and I don't, in the mining sector, Justin, you know, those in that industry, there's, I think, a pretty good network, but you see some of those things that really, you know, either get headlines or within a specific industry that maybe, you know, shakes a neighborhood. It has an impact to multiple people. Those are things we would like to incorporate the learnings. The hard part sometimes is getting the detail. I know the Chemical Safety Board, CSB, does a great job with some of their safety alerts that come out. Some of those are a bit dated, but we know when a company has a catastrophic event, that probably not the first thing they want to do is just share what happened with the community. So it's I think really what we can control and what we can analyze within our own walls, within our own operations, is the starting point. And again, the networking that we can do at events like the summit, at your industry peer groups when you're getting together. You mentioned your task force, your roundtables, that we have to get in the sense of sharing these things, not to make the company look bad or certainly shame the employee, but to help the rest of us to protect our own teams as it comes to the same risks.
That's right.
Justin, how do you address that?
Yeah, I'm similar approaches to what Adam's saying. You know, that initial headline, everyone's on it. Could this actually happen to us? What kind of controls do we have in place? But unfortunately, the lag in the legal system in the investigation, by the time it gets done for that nature of an incident, there's quite some time that takes, goes by. But at our Mine Safety Roundtable, we do take that fairly transparent approach to get a little bit more detail. We're not giving specifics, company neutral, those sorts of things, but yes, we saw the headline, but what were a few layers of the details that we can actually really learn today and go forward? But that's a tough one. We're just gonna have to keep working at it. That's the networking piece and learning and interacting with people.
Awesome. Okay, I know we had one up at this table.
This gentleman?
Oh, way over on the side.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Alex actually kind of touched on it, but we're in an industry kind of the same where, I work more here in the U.S., but even we're on a global scale. So when you make a change, sometimes that was the part that I was gonna ask about, like a process you may have for verification, and validation. The engineering piece is a lot easier when you make an engineering change. Go through the MOC process, engineering request, and have someone. But do you have a defined, I was going to say like a defined process, whether it's someone physically going out there and looking to make sure the changes are made, or is it just based on waiting on, the first line supervisor to run around, like crazy to report back that it's been completed? But is it something defined? Because we struggle with it. We have, rigs all over the U.S., all over the world, and if we have a SIF event or, something of that nature is major, we may go through the process of going through engineering or rewriting the policy or identifying safeguards, but when we actually implement them into the field on the rig, what does that validation look like? And for us, it made sense that we have someone, dedicated to do that, but I wanted to see what y'all were doing.
My comment to this is, I'm with you. Change is hard, right? Everyone agree? So we have a couple, what I've been able to do, and this is just my crazy brain, I talk about change in different segments, right? There's leading change, there's this transformational change, that like cultural impact change type of change that we can follow, like this ADCAR approach to change, like awareness, desire, knowledge, actions, results, and we have to make sure we facilitate our folks through each one of those if we want to achieve the results. And then there's just MOC, the very technical aspect of review, of proposing a change, reviewing and assessing change, trying it out, testing it, small scale, pilot, rollout, and then that really, it's a combination of identifying owners, which Justin talked about, that is very important, is making sure who owns this. At every site or location, having a POC that's responsible for managing things. But also, there's software that can help with this, being able to track and put due dates and hold people accountable. I mean, it sounds crazy, but using, Asana or somebody shout out a project management tool that you use, but Asana is one. Well, who is it? Jira. Okay, sounds like a Pfizer medication. But ask your doctor about Jira today. So yes, absolutely, that will help because you can, especially at scale with geographically distributed personnel and locations, simplify it as much as you can. But think of change in those chunks. That has helped me. The technical aspects of it, and then the verification, what I said earlier, make sure you add this. There's some in part of your MOC checklist. Do we need to change standard work, even if it's weekly audits or inspections? Do we need to add a line item or a question or something? Because if you don't, there's a gap and folks are not going to look at it, and there goes your verification. So it is this end-to-end process. That's why change is hard. It is hard, but it can be managed, and it's you can do it that way. So I would encourage you all, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. How do you manage that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for a particular event that may be across the enterprise, establish some of those specific checkpoints. It may be this list of things you have to verify on every powered industrial truck across the enterprise. But you mentioned point of contact. Someone at each site understands the risk. They understand what they're looking at with the powered industrial truck. But it goes back to where we were talking about that senior leadership. That's what drives the resources, the energy, and kind of the motor that keeps the organization going. If they're saying, okay, we need you to take a timeout regardless of the production pressures and the things that are around us in the supply chain and the market, we're focused here and we're not going to move forward until we verify that we're safe in this particular aspect. And it could be specific to that incident, specific to what were the missing safeguards. And there may be major resources that need to be allocated across the organization to make sure we have those valid controls.
Yeah. How about you, Justin?
Same thing? Similarly, we're going through this transition. It's a culture change transition that's going for us, and it's really that leadership commitment to it. And verification is a big part of this culture change. Everything from a TapRoot root cause analysis, corrective action implementation. Yeah. Are we going back 6 months later and verifying that action actually is in place? Our critical controls that we're talking about with the SIFs and critical risk management, verifications happening? Are we verifying our training? So this is a big culture change for us, and that's where we need to get to. We need to double check. We just can't take it for word. We need to see and verify.
That's right. Okay, how are we on time? Al, I'm going to go to my timekeeper over here. Alex, we got some more questions? I saw some other hands, so I want to make sure we get everybody's input because I love this, sharing this information. Anybody else? Hands, comments, questions, sharing success that you've had? Anybody? Okay, now I'm going to put him on the spot. I'm going to throw it to Alex for a second. And because you've been sitting over there listening to all of this, mostly me stumbling through this, but what can you add? Because I know you got a bunch that you can add to this. Let's go. Come on, bring them up here.
So that's not necessary.
Yeah, he's like, oh, you haven't heard me talk yet.
Well, they know me, and they know me. I did a session yesterday on this very idea about being ready to start and thinking about this paradigm of SIF. And I think the one challenge I would give to people listening and people in here, we want to take this program and not make it about you guys didn't do this verification, you guys left this control in a bad state or in a red state. It's got to be a program of we don't begin work until we are in a safe state and in a controlled state. And I think that's got to be the guiding philosophy with SIFs is we know what keeps us safe, we know what we need to do in order to verify and validate. So I think the operator has to verify it's in place, and we as leaders have to come behind and validate that that process is working. And so all of those elements have to come together to be positive and not blame oriented for the people that are doing this task, and so that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
But fantastic discussion. Can I get a round of applause for these 2 gentlemen?
Oh, no, these two.
These 2 gentlemen.
I'm with you over here.
This is normal for him, but these guys, we did ask them to present out on this topic, and this is a different way of presenting, so they were excited. So I appreciate everybody's engagement in this, and you guys, thank you for participating, and Blaine for participating in the summit as well. So thank you guys.
No, good time.
Thanks, Blaine.
Good time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That was
I
great.
appreciate
All
it.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.